I looked at the shimmering water off Imperial Beach, the kind of perfect San Diego afternoon that screams, "Everything is fine." And everything was fine. I was 74, married 50 years, sipping iced tea in my immaculate condo. Even my husband Frank saw me smile. He didn't notice the small tremor in my hand or the steel beneath my consistent voice. People think revenge needs confrontation, but the strongest revenge stories are wrapped in politeness. Every act of kindness I showed him was just another brick in the wall I built to keep him out when it mattered most. And I knew, as I handed him his perfectly chilled glass, that he was already trapped inside. The Keurig hissed, filling the blue ceramic mug. Steam rose in a thin column, carrying the smell of French roast through our kitchen. I placed the mug on a small tray with his 2 sugar packets and a tiny spoon. In Imperial Beach, everyone saw me smile. Even him. I walked into the living room. The morning light washed over our condo, making the glass and steel tables shine. Frank sat in his leather recliner, his back to the ocean view, his tablet held up in front of his face. "Good morning, dear," I said. "I brought your coffee," he grunted. His finger tapped on the glass. Tap, tap, tap. I set the tray down on the side table next to him. "Don't forget, you have your dental cleaning at 2. I've put it in your calendar." Humph. My tone didn't change. I didn't distance myself. I stayed close, kind, and consistent. I went back to the kitchen, my movements measured, and started to wipe down the already clean quartz countertops. Frank and I were ghosts in this sterile, modern place. He was 76, I was 74, and we had been married for 50 years. His world was in that bright little screen. Mine was managing the house, the finances, his schedule, and the smart thermostat that he still couldn't figure out. I felt it then. A sudden lightness in my head. The room tilted, the bright white cabinets blurring at the edges. I gripped the counter. The stone felt cool beneath my palms, but the coolness was distant. I took a breath. The dizziness passed. It was probably nothing. I was just tired. I turned toward the sink, and the floor dropped away. It didn't happen fast. It was a slow, heavy lean to the left. My hand slipped off the counter. My hip hit the edge of the dishwasher, a dull knock. Then my shoulder and finally my head. The cold kitchen tile met my cheek. It was very quiet. I could hear the refrigerator hum. I could hear the tap, tap, tapping of Frank's finger on his tablet from the other room. "Frank!" I called out. My voice was small, dry. The tapping continued. "Frank!" I tried again, louder. My head ached. The tapping stopped. I heard his chair creak. Heavy footsteps, slow, coming down the hall. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, a silhouette against the bright living room. "What is it?" "I'm trying to read my emails." His voice was high with irritation. I fell, Frank," he sighed, a long put-upon sound. "Well, can you get up? You're going to make me late for my 9 o'clock call." He didn't move to help me. He just stood there waiting. I pushed myself up onto my elbows. The room spun. I think I need to see a doctor." The clinic smelled like disinfectant and stale air. I sat on the examination table, the paper crinkling beneath me. I was frightened. My hands were trembling in my lap. I kept thinking about the fall, the silence before Frank appeared, the look of annoyance on his face. Frank sat in the hard plastic visitor's chair. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring at his smartphone, his thumb swiping aggressively. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, loud enough for me to hear. "The Wi-Fi in this place is terrible. How is anyone supposed to get anything done?" He stood up, walked to the door, and stuck his head out. "Excuse me, is the guest network supposed to be this slow?" A nurse hurried past, not stopping. Frank huffed and came back in, sitting down with a thump. "Ruining my whole afternoon." A young doctor finally came in, holding a chart. She smiled kindly at me. "Mrs. Vance, I'm Dr. Patil. We got your test results back. Your blood work looks fine. Heart rhythm is stable. But your blood pressure is very high." She sat on a stool, looking me right in the eye. "You said you fell after a spell of dizziness?" I nodded. "Yes, the room just tilted." "Mrs. Vance, based on what you've told me and these results, I believe this was caused by stress." "Severe stress. I looked at Frank. He was trying to balance his tablet on his knee, his brows furrowed as he tried to find a signal. He hadn't heard a word. He was present, but he wasn't there. He hadn't been for 20 years. He was just a man I managed. Dr. Patil prescribed medication and told me to monitor my pressure. And you need to find ways to reduce your stress, Mrs. Vance. It's critical. On the drive home, Frank complained about the traffic on the I-5. He complained about the clinic. He complained that he'd missed his call. I stared out the window at the Pacific Ocean. The water was gray and calm. In that car, a decision settled over me. It wasn't angry. It wasn't loud. It was as quiet and final as the tide. I wasn't his partner. I was his unpaid manager, and my job was ending. That evening, I waited until he was settled in his recliner, tablet glowing. I approached him with my consistent, kind smile. "Frank, dear," I said, my voice soft. "That scare today, it really made me realize we're not getting any younger, He said, eyes on his screen. "Our life, it's just so complicated. This big condo, all these assets and accounts. It's a lot to manage. It's a lot of stress." I let that word hang in the air. "I think we need to simplify. For our peace of mind." He finally looked up, his expression blank. Then he shrugged. "Whatever you think is best, Elle. You've always been good with the details." He looked back down at his screen. I stood there for a moment, the smile fixed on my face. Every act of kindness, I thought, was just another brick. The work began on Monday. People think revenge needs confrontation, but the strongest revenge stories are wrapped in politeness. I started with our digital life. It was the easiest place to build a wall because Frank never looked there. He only looked at it. I sat at the small desk in the corner of our living room. The printer hummed, spitting out bank forms. The smell of warm ink and paper filled the air. I organized them into neat stacks, one for our joint checking, one for the brokerage account, one for the money market. That evening, I approached Frank while he was watching a baseball game on his tablet, the volume low. "Frank, I've been working on our simplification plan," I said, keeping my voice light. "That's nice, Elle." He didn't look up. "The first step should be our finances. It's a mess. If something happens to one of us, it will be a nightmare for the other." "It's just smart estate planning," he grunted. "Sounds complicated." "It won't be," I assured him. "I'll handle everything. We just need to create 2 separate simple accounts. Your money and my money. Clean, easy." "If we have separate accounts, how will you pay for the utilities? The groceries?" he asked, a flicker of annoyance in his voice. "I'll manage that. We can each contribute a small amount to a joint household bill account. The rest," I said, "will be our own. Simple." He waved a hand. Fine. Just don't interrupt the game." For the next 2 weeks, I worked late into the night. The condo was silent except for the soft click-clack of my keyboard. I sat in the blue light of the monitor, navigating online banking portals Frank had never logged into. I used a yellow legal pad and a calculator, drawing neat lines, dividing 50 years of shared life in half. I split the checking account. I split the savings. I liquidated a portion of our brokerage funds and prepared the transfer forms. I did it all online, using passwords I had set and managed for 2 decades. The paperwork was the only part I couldn't do alone. I brought him the first stack on a Thursday morning. He was in his recliner, coffee in hand, tablet in his lap. "Dear, I just need your signature on these," I said, holding out a pen and the clipped stack of papers. He sighed, his shoulders slumping. "How many?" "Just a few today. This opens your new personal checking account." He barely glanced at the paper. He found the line marked with a small yellow "Sign Here" sticker. He scribbled his name, F. Vance. "Is that all?" he asked, reaching for his coffee. "My investment club call starts in 5 minutes." "Almost," I said, sliding the first stack aside and replacing it with another. "This one authorizes the transfer of funds from our joint brokerage account into your new personal one. Elle, I'm busy. It will only take a second." "I've highlighted the line." He scrawled his name again, faster this time. Are we done? I have to prepare. All done. Thank you, dear. This will make things so much easier for both of us. He just grunted and turned his full attention to the tablet, already forgetting the papers he'd signed. I took the documents back to the desk. I placed them in a pre-addressed envelope for the bank. I didn't take them to the mailbox. I drove them directly to the post office and handed them to the clerk. A few days later, the new bank cards arrived. 2 separate envelopes. One addressed to Frank Vance, one addressed to Eleanor Vance. I opened mine. The plastic was blue and new. I ran my thumb over my own name. It was the first time in 50 years I had a bank card that was not connected to his. I took Frank's envelope and his new card. I activated it for him. I wrote down the PIN on a fresh sticky note. I placed the card and the note on the side table by his recliner, right next to his coffee. "Your new bank card, dear," I said politely. "Just like we discussed. For your simple new account." He picked it up, glanced at it, and tossed it onto the table. "Don't need it. You have all the passwords." "Of course," I said. I went back to the kitchen. I had done it. The digital wall was built. He just couldn't see it. The condo felt different now. Bigger, colder. I looked at the white walls, the glass tables, the ocean view he ignored. It was time to simplify the rest. The digital partition was only the first step. A line drawn in the sand. Now I had to move the sand itself. I spent my mornings on the balcony, my laptop warm on my knees. The salty air was cool, but I barely noticed it. I wasn't watching the waves. I was scrolling through real estate listings in downtown San Diego. I clicked "Sale Pending" on the listing for our own condo. We had accepted an offer. It was all moving very fast, just as I'd planned. Frank, oblivious, was inside. He only knew that simplifying meant we were moving. He assumed we meant together. I found a new building, a high-rise near the gas lamp quarter. It was modern, clean, and most importantly, had 2 separate one-bedroom units for sale. On the same floor, right next door to each other. I bookmarked the listings. I rehearsed my lines. I waited until after lunch, when Frank was usually in a dull, sleepy mood. I walked into the living room. He was in his recliner, but his tablet was balanced on his stomach, his eyes closed. "Frank," I said softly. His eyes snapped open. "What?" I was resting. "I found a wonderful solution for our move," I said, pulling over a dining chair to sit opposite him. I held out my laptop. "Look," he squinted at the screen. "A building, so what? It's downtown. Very convenient. But the best part is the setup." I clicked between the 2 listings. There are 2 units available. Unit 704 and Unit 705, right next door to each other. He looked confused. "Why would we need 2? I leaned in, keeping my voice kind and patient. "It's the perfect simplification, dear. Think about it. We sell the condo and we each have our own space. No more fuss. No more getting in each other's way." I watched his expression. The confusion faded. A slow flicker of interest replaced it. "My own space?" he said. "Exactly," I encouraged. "Your own man cave, like you've always wanted. You can have your calls, watch your games, no interruptions. I like the sound of that," he said, sitting up a little straighter. "And I'll be right next door," I added smoothly. "If you need anything at all, it's the best of both worlds." He looked at the screen again, this time with genuine interest. "My own place, yes, that sounds good. That sounds very simple." "I'm glad you agree," I said, closing the laptop. "I'll handle the paperwork." The closing was 3 weeks later. We sat in a sterile conference room that smelled of strong coffee and new carpet. The title agent, a young woman with sharp glasses, pushed a mountain of paper across the table. "Mr. and Mrs. Vance, if you'll just sign and initial all the pages marked with a flag," she said, her voice a monotone. Frank sighed, picked up the pen, and began to scribble. He didn't read a single word. He just signed where I pointed. "And finally," the agent said, clicking her mouse, "we just need to confirm the wiring instructions for the proceeds. We have them here. A 50-50 split of the funds." Frank grunted, busy checking his phone for a signal. "That's correct," I said, my voice perfectly level. I handed her the sheet of paper with our 2 new separate account numbers. 50% to this account, 50% to this one. She typed, nodded, and printed a final sheet. All set. Congratulations on your sale. We drove back to the Imperial Beach condo. It was hollow. The furniture was gone. The walls were bare. Our footsteps echoed on the hardwood floors. All that remained were 2 small suitcases by the front door. Frank looked around the vast, empty living room, his face blank. The silence seemed to confuse him. Well, he said, that's done. He looked at me, a flicker of dependence in his eyes. So, where are the movers meeting us? They're already at the new building, I said. I sent them ahead. Oh, good. He shifted his weight, suddenly uncertain. Which apartment is mine? I picked up my suitcase. I held up a key ring. On it were 2 new shining keys. I have them right here, dear, I said, smiling. Let's go. I'll show you. The hallway of the new building smelled like fresh paint. 2 doors, Unit 704 and Unit 705, stood side by side. Movers, young men in blue shirts, were trying to pivot the large leather recliner toward 705. No, no! Frank's voice was sharp, echoing in the narrow hall. That's the wrong angle. You're going to scratch the door frame. The mover paused, sweating. Sir, if you give us a moment, just stop. You'll break it. Can't anyone do this right? Frank threw his hands up and stepped back, useless and grumpy. I stepped forward, my voice calm. Gentlemen, if you'll just turn it on its side, the back will clear the jam. There's plenty of room. They looked at me, nodded, and did exactly as I said. The chair slid through easily. Well, they should have known that, Frank muttered. He walked into the empty living room, looked at the bare walls, and seemed immediately lost. Where is the television going? I spent the next 48 hours in a state of serene efficiency. My own apartment, 704, remained full of sealed boxes. I slept on a mattress on the floor. His comfort was the priority. That was the foundation of the wall. I directed the movers. I unpacked his boxes. I set up his life. His new leather recliner, smelling faintly of conditioner, was placed in the exact spot he liked, facing the wall where the television would go. I handled the installers, oversaw the mounting, and then, sitting on the floor, I unwrapped the new smart remote. Is the Wi-Fi on? Frank called from the recliner. He had his tablet in his lap, but the screen was blank. My tablet isn't connecting. I have my club call. I'm working on it now, dear. I found the new black router. I plugged it into the wall. I connected the cables. I read the long, complex password from the bottom of the box and typed it into the setup screen on my own phone. I waited. The small green light on the router, which had been blinking, turned solid. A moment later, I heard the ping of a notification from his tablet. Humph, he grunted. He was reconnected to his investments, his world. I turned back to the television. I went through the setup screens one by one. I downloaded the apps for his baseball games and his news channels. I logged into every single one, using the passwords I kept in a small notebook. I placed the remote on the arm of his chair. It's all set, Frank. He just nodded, his finger already tapping on his tablet. Next, the kitchen. I unpacked the groceries I'd had delivered. The new stainless steel refrigerator hummed. I filled the crisper with iceberg lettuce. I put the half and half in the door, right at the front. I stocked the freezer with the frozen dinners he liked. I found the blue ceramic mug, his mug, and placed it by the new Keurig. By the end of the second day, Unit 705 was a perfect copy of his old life, just smaller. The next morning, I woke at 7 in my own empty apartment. I made my own coffee. At 8 a.m., I walked out of my door, crossed the 2 feet of hallway, and used my key to unlock 705. His apartment was quiet. He was already in his chair, tablet glowing. Good morning, dear, I said. Coffee. I went to his new kitchen. I prepared the French roast, 2 sugars. I placed it on the small tray and brought it to him. Here you are. He took the mug. The light in here is different. It's facing east, dear. You get the morning sun. Humph, fine. This was our new routine. I remained consistent. I walked over every morning. I brought him his coffee. I made a list of his groceries. I picked up his prescriptions from the pharmacy in the lobby. He was so comfortable, so perfectly managed, that he didn't realize he was no longer a husband. He was a guest in his own life. About a week later, I was in 704, finally unpacking my own books, when my phone rang. I looked at the screen. Frank. He was calling me from next door. I sighed, silenced the call, and put the phone in my pocket. I walked out of my apartment and let myself into his. He was in his chair, phone in hand, looking irritated. "I was calling you," he said, his voice accusatory. "Why didn't you pick up?" "I saw you were calling, so I came right over." "What's wrong, dear?" "It's the remote," he said, holding it out as if it were toxic. "It's not working. The screen is blank. I'm missing the pregame." I took the remote from his hand. It was smooth and black. I turned it over. I slid the small plastic door off the back. "The batteries are dead, Frank." He looked at me. His eyes were wide with genuine, helpless confusion. "Oh." He seemed completely lost. "Well, where do we keep the new ones?" I looked at this man who managed a complex investment club and barked orders at movers. He couldn't find a battery. I smiled my kind, consistent smile. "Don't you worry, dear. I'll take care of it." I finally unpacked my books. They filled a small white shelf in my new living room. My apartment, 704, was starting to feel like my own. It smelled like lavender and the chamomile tea I was sipping. It was quiet. The only sound was the soft rustle of a page as I turned it. For the first time in years, I felt a stillness. I was just Eleanor. I was not a manager. I was not a wife. I was just a 74-year-old woman in a comfortable chair, reading a novel. Then, through the wall, I heard a thud. I lowered my book. I listened. The silence returned. I raised my cup to take a drink. "No." The shout was muffled but clear. "No, no, no!" I set my cup down. I heard another noise, a sharp crack. It sounded like plastic hitting a wall. I stood up just as a frantic pounding began on my door. Bang, bang, bang. It wasn't a polite knock. It was a fist. I walked to the door and unlocked it. Frank burst in. He didn't wait for an invitation. He just stormed past me, almost knocking me over. His face was a blotchy red. He was breathing hard, a shallow whistling sound. His gray hair was sticking up on one side. He was still in his pajamas, the blue-striped ones I'd bought him. He was clutching his tablet in one hand, his knuckles white. "Frank, what is it?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "The club," he yelled. He wasn't talking to me, just to the room. "That idiot Johnson. He swore it was a sure thing. A margin call." He spun around to face me, his eyes wide and frantic. "It's gone, Elle, all of it. The whole account, gone." I stood by the door, my hand still on the knob. I said nothing. I just watched him. "Did you hear me?" he shouted. "My account? The one you set up. It's empty!" "They're going to liquidate everything." "I heard you, Frank. Well, don't just stand there." He waved the tablet at me. I tried to transfer funds from the joint account, but it said insufficient funds. The old account. "It's not working." He was pacing now from my small sofa to my bookshelf and back. "I told you this new system was stupid. It's too complicated." He stopped, his breath catching. He looked at me, but it was like he was looking at a tool he'd just remembered he owned. A new kind of desperation came into his eyes. "You have to fix this," he said. He was no longer yelling. His voice was a low, urgent command. He walked right up to me, his face close to mine. I could smell the stale coffee on his breath. "Eleanor, we need to move money from the main account. Our account. We have to cover this. Now." He said it with such certainty. He said we, he said our. He was panicked, yes. But underneath the panic, he was the same man from the clinic, annoyed, entitled, certain that I existed to solve the problems that interrupted his day. I looked at his red, frightened face. He had no idea. He was standing on the other side of a wall he couldn't see, shouting for a door that wasn't there. He stood there panting, his hand out as if I was supposed to hand him a solution. "The main account, Eleanor. Now." I just looked at him. I didn't move. My apartment was so quiet. I could hear the faint hum of my own refrigerator. I could smell my chamomile tea growing cold on the end table. I let the silence stretch out, filling the space between us. His ragged breathing was the only sound. "What are you doing?" he demanded, his voice cracking. "Why are you just standing there?" "I'm sorry, Frank," I said. My voice was quiet, not kind, not warm. It was just a voice. "But there is no we in this." His face twitched. A look of genuine confusion crossed his features, cutting through the panic. What are you talking about? We? Of course we. It's our money." "No," I said, just as quietly. "There is no main account. There is my account. And there is your account, the one you just emptied." He stared at me as if I'd started speaking a different language. He actually shook his head like he was trying to clear water from his ears. That's crazy," he sputtered. "The joint account. The brokerage. The money from the condo." "The money from the condo was split 50-50, I said. "The brokerage account was liquidated. The joint account was closed. All of it was divided, Frank, weeks ago." "You signed the papers," he laughed. It was a short, sharp, ugly sound. "The papers? What papers?" "You just gave me things to sign. You always handled it." He jabbed a finger at me, his hand trembling. "You've always fixed everything. The mortgage, the taxes, the Wi-Fi. That's your job. You handle the details." He said it with such finality. "That's your job." I took a small breath. I looked at his face, at the small broken blood vessels on his nose, at the watery panic in his eyes. The smile I had worn for 50 years was gone. It didn't fade. It just wasn't there. "Yes," I said. "I did." My voice was neutral. It was the voice I would use to read a grocery list. I did handle it. I managed your digital life. I managed your social life. I managed your home life. I managed your coffee, your prescriptions, your television, and your batteries. For 50 years I was your manager." He flinched at the word. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "You were emotionally abandoned from me for 20 years, Frank," I continued, my voice staying on that same flat, neutral line. "You just didn't notice." I held his gaze. "You didn't notice because I was still here. I was still stocking your fridge. I was still paying your bills. I was still smiling." He just stared. The red was draining from his face, leaving it a pale, sickly gray. He understood the words, but he couldn't yet understand what they meant. He stood there for a long time. The only sound in my apartment was the distant, muffled hum of traffic from the street below. He looked small. The anger was gone. The red splotches on his face had faded. He just looked like a 76-year-old man in his pajamas, lost in a room he didn't recognize. "But," he whispered. His voice was thin. "But what am I supposed to do?" He looked around my living room, at my books, at my cold cup of tea. His eyes were desperate. He was searching for his manager. He was searching for the woman who handled the details. My money," he stammered. "My calls. Who—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "Who will take care of me?" I turned away from him. I did not say another word. I walked the few steps to my front door. My hand was steady as I turned the knob. I pulled the door open. The bright, neutral light of the hallway cut a sharp rectangle onto my floor. I stood there, holding the door, waiting. I heard him move, a slow, shuffling sound on the rug. He stopped right behind me. I could feel him hesitating, waiting for me to turn, to fix it, to smile and tell him it was all a simple mistake. I just held the door. He finally moved past me, into the hall. He stood in the small space between 704 and 705. He looked at his door, then back at me. His face was a mask of pure, helpless terror. "I'm sure you'll figure it out, dear," I said. My voice was perfectly, consistently polite. It was the same tone I had used 1,000 times to remind him of his appointments. "You were always so good with the details." He flinched, as if I had hit him. I closed the door. The latch made a quiet click. I turned the deadbolt. I stood with my back against the door for a full minute. My heart was not racing. I did not feel powerful or victorious. I just felt still. My apartment was quiet again. Some time has passed. I don't mark it. I am sitting on my balcony now. It's evening. The air is cool and I've made a fresh cup of tea. The smell of chamomile mixes with the city air. I can hear San Diego living, 7 floors below. The sound of cars, the distant music from a restaurant, the faint call of a siren. I heard from the building manager that Frank moved out of 705. It happened a few weeks after that day. I do not know where he went. I did not ask. I look out at the lights of the city. I am not happy. I am not sad. I am simply present. People think revenge needs confrontation. They think it's an explosion, a fire, an act of passion. But my revenge wasn't a passion. It was a simplification. It was an act of tidying up. San Diego gave me the space to do it right. I didn't take anything loudly. I just took everything slowly, wrapped in politeness, until there was nothing left to hide.